I, 21F, feel torn between my family's traditions and my relationship with Alex, 23M. Hey everyone, I've never really posted about my personal life here, but I'm feeling a bit lost and I could use some outside perspectives. I'm a 21-year-old woman, and my parents are originally from India. They came to the United States a few decades ago, worked tirelessly to build a life here, and they've always had pretty strong ideas about what they want for me. They raised me in a loving home, but they put a lot of emphasis on tradition and what they believe to be a proper future, good education, stable job, and eventually settling down with a partner who fits in well with our family's cultural background. The thing is, for most of my life, I've tried to make them proud. I'm in college now, studying literature, a choice my parents accepted, but they keep dropping subtle hints that a more practical major might have been better. That's a whole other story, but it sets the stage for how strongly they feel about life decisions. Now, onto the main problem. I've been dating Alex, 23M, for about 6 months. We met at a friend's small birthday gathering last fall. I remember walking in and seeing him struggling to open a soda bottle without a proper opener, so I helped him out, and we ended up chatting all evening. He's half Irish and half Indian, though he doesn't speak any Indian languages. At first, I didn't think too much about his background. I only noticed that he was fun to talk to, made me laugh, and showed genuine interest in my life and goals. We swapped numbers, started meeting for coffee, and before I knew it, I was completely smitten. Things have been going great between us. Alex is supportive, warm, and adventurous in a way that I find inspiring. He plays the guitar, loves exploring new places, and actually got me into hiking even though I used to hate the idea of getting sweaty outside. The more time we spent together, the more I realized I wasn't just casually dating. This felt real. I decided to tell my parents about Alex a few weeks ago. I was nervous, but I thought they'd be happy for me since they always said they just wanted me to find someone who respects me and treats me well. My dad smiled and asked a few questions at first, about Alex's job, his family, where did he grow up. But then the questions got more pointed. Does he speak any Indian language? Does he know anything about our festivals? What does his father do, and are they religious like us? I remember sitting at the dinner table, hearing these questions, and feeling like I was caught between them and Alex. On one hand, I understood that my parents just wanted to make sure I'd be with someone who wouldn't dismiss our family's traditions. On the other, I felt defensive, because Alex is such a kind soul, and he's always been curious about my background, even if he doesn't fully understand it. As the weeks passed, I noticed my parents acting differently whenever I mentioned Alex. They'd get quiet or sometimes change the subject. I tried to invite them to meet him over a casual dinner, but they always had reasons to postpone or avoid it. Meanwhile, Alex has his own set of worries. His father, who lives in another state, wants Alex to keep strong ties to his Indian heritage, while his Irish grandparents seem more laid back and just want him to be happy. Alex has told me stories about how he spent his childhood navigating two very different worlds, never feeling fully accepted by either side. It's complicated, and I don't want to add to his stress by telling him my parents might be wary of him. I love my parents, but I also care deeply for Alex. I'm not sure how to handle the tension that's building. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells, trying to reassure my parents that I respect their wishes, while also not wanting to downplay how I feel about Alex. Any advice on how to bridge this gap? How do I show my parents that Alex is worth getting to know without pressuring him more than too much? Update 1. Hey everyone, I'm back with an update. First off, thanks so much for all the thoughtful comments and suggestions. I wasn't expecting so many people to share their own stories of navigating similar situations. It made me feel less alone. After reading your advice, I decided to have a more direct chat with my parents. I picked a quiet evening when my mom was in the kitchen and my dad was watching TV. I took a deep breath, walked in, and switched the TV off. They both looked up, surprised, and I just started talking. I told them how important their support was to me, and that I understood their concerns about cultural differences. Then I explained how Alex has always been respectful about my heritage. He even asked me once to teach him how to cook dal and insisted on learning the names of different spices. I said I'd never want to lose my connection to my roots, and being with Alex doesn't make me forget who I am. If anything, it makes me appreciate it more, because I get to share it with someone new. My parents listened quietly. My mom looked like she wanted to say something but held back, and my dad's face was hard to read. After I finished, there was a moment of silence that felt like it stretched on forever. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and said something like, "We just want to be sure you're not going to abandon everything we taught you." I felt tears welling up in my eyes because that question showed they didn't fully trust my judgment. But I also realized it wasn't about me personally, they just had certain fears about losing me to a different culture. So I tried to speak calmly and said, I would never abandon our family's values. I just want someone who will grow with me, appreciate where I come from, and support me in exploring my own future. I think Alex can be that person. They didn't give me a full blessing right then and there, but they didn't shut me down either. My dad nodded, and my mom sighed, looking thoughtful. I asked if they'd consider meeting Alex soon, maybe over dinner at our favorite Indian restaurant. They said they'd think about it. That was more progress than I expected. On my way back to my room, I felt a tiny spark of relief. It wasn't a magical solution, but at least the door wasn't slammed shut. I texted Alex to let him know I'd talk to them. He sent back a string of heart emojis and asked if I was okay. Somehow, that simple response made me feel like everything was worth the effort. Update 2. Hey everyone, it's me again. A lot has happened since my last update, and I'm feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. My parents finally agreed to meet Alex. We decided on a casual dinner at our favorite Indian restaurant, someplace comfortable for my parents, but also interesting enough for Alex, who's been eager to try more of my culture's food. So, let me take you through that night as it happened. We arrive at the restaurant around 7 p.m. I'm dressed in a simple, bright top and jeans, trying not to look too formal. Alex shows up first and texts me that he's waiting outside. I find him standing by the entrance, fidgeting with the collar of his shirt. He looks handsome but also a bit nervous. I give him a quick hug and whisper, "You'll be fine," trying to calm both of us. My parents drive up a few minutes later. Mom steps out in a traditional Salwar kameez, and Dad is wearing a neat button-down shirt. I notice right away that they're scanning Alex, probably making all kinds of mental notes, how he stands, his facial expressions, everything. I can't help but feel a bit anxious, but I remind myself to breathe. We head inside and get seated at a round table near a window. The restaurant's warm lighting and soft music create a welcoming vibe, which helps me relax. When the waiter hands us the menus, Alex looks over them carefully, asking me for recommendations. My dad watches him but keeps silent. Then, out of nowhere, my dad starts listing the spiciest dishes, almost like a challenge. Alex smiles and says, "I'm open to trying new things, but maybe I'll start slow with medium spice," which makes my dad raise an eyebrow. I feel a chill in the air, worried that my dad is testing Alex's tolerance for Indian culture in the form of chili peppers. Despite the tension, the conversation starts to pick up. My mom asks Alex about his job. He works as a junior designer at a marketing firm, something he's really passionate about because he's been drawing and creating since childhood. He explains a bit about his projects, and I see Mom's eyes flicker with curiosity. She nods politely, maybe impressed that he's serious about his work. Then Alex, trying to engage them, talks about how his dad is Indian but didn't teach him the language, so he feels he's missed part of his heritage. He says he's been trying to learn more about Indian customs, especially after meeting me. My dad listens quietly, and for a moment, I catch what looks like a hint of approval on his face, like he appreciates the effort. Dinner arrives, and the food is amazing. There's butter chicken, spicy vindaloo, palak paneer, fresh naan, everything. My mom starts serving everyone, and Alex thanks her each time, which seems to please her. Then he takes a bite of the vindaloo, and I see him flush red. He coughs a bit, grabs his water, and tries to laugh it off. My dad almost smiles, like a subtle grin, before taking a bite himself. It's a strange evening of small gestures and cautious words, but it ends on a decent note. As we step out of the restaurant, Alex thanks my parents for taking the time to meet him. My mom nods and says something like, "We'll see you again, perhaps," which isn't exactly a glowing endorsement, but it's not a rejection either. My dad shakes Alex's hand firmly, and though he doesn't say much, it feels like a tiny step forward. When I get home, I notice my parents are quieter than usual. Eventually, Mom says, "He seems polite," and that's about all I get out of her. But for me, "he seems polite" feels like a victory. I text Alex, and we end up calling each other, laughing about the vindaloo incident and how he nearly cried from the heat. Despite the awkwardness, I feel relieved. My parents actually sat down with him, and the world didn't end. It feels like progress, slow, but genuine. Update 3. Hello again. I'm a little surprised by how invested some of you have become in this story, but your support helps me a lot. After the restaurant meetup, I tried to gauge my parents' overall impression of Alex. My mom's comment, "He seems polite," was the only direct feedback I got that night. My dad stayed silent but didn't discourage me from seeing him. During the last week, though, things got trickier. My aunt, who lives nearby, dropped by for a visit. She's very outspoken and sometimes speaks for the whole family, whether they like it or not. While chatting in the living room, she asked if I'd met anyone special. My mom tried to change the subject, but my aunt noticed and pressed harder. I hesitantly admitted I was dating someone. The minute I said, "His name is Alex," her eyebrows shot up. She bombarded me with questions about his background, religion, whether he'd be okay with certain Indian family customs, and if his parents even knew about me. It felt like an interrogation. My mom just stood by, wringing her hands, looking uneasy. My aunt eventually turned to my dad and said something like, "You should really be careful. We want to keep our traditions alive, don't we?" I felt the mood in the house shift. My dad looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to argue, but also didn't want to dismiss his sister's concerns. After she left, I expected my parents to scold me or at least lecture me. Instead, my mom just asked, "Are you sure about him?" The question caught me off guard. I realized I hadn't fully thought about the deeper implications. I've always liked Alex because he makes me feel understood, but I'd never paused to consider whether I was ready to go against my family's older traditions. My heart said yes, but my mind felt uneasy. In that moment, I just shrugged and said, "I'm happy with Alex." My mom sighed. She and my dad didn't say much else. Later that night, I met up with Alex and told him about my aunt's visit. He listened, looking concerned. Then he said, "I'm not going anywhere, you know, I'm here." He didn't offer any grand speeches or solutions, just calm reassurance. Somehow, it made me feel better, even if I couldn't explain why. Still, the tension with my family has grown thicker. My aunt calls every few days, hinting that I should think twice about long-term plans with someone from a different background. I'm trying not to get frustrated. I love my aunt, but she's not exactly flexible in her views. I keep telling myself that maybe, with time, she'll ease up. Update 4. Hi everyone. A lot has happened recently. I'm starting to feel the weight of it all. But some things have improved too. Let me walk you through the latest events as they unfolded. Saturday morning, I wake up early because Alex and I decided to attend a cultural festival in our city, an event celebrating Indian music, dance, and food. I'm thrilled because I want Alex to experience this part of my world in a fun and vibrant way. I invite my parents to join us, but they decline, saying they have errands. I don't push it. Saturday afternoon, Alex and I arrive at the festival. The air is filled with the aroma of street food, samosas, chaat, kebabs, and lively music from all directions. We wander through the stalls, sampling treats and watching dance performances. At one point, we stumble upon a booth offering henna tattoos. I grin and ask Alex if he wants one, half joking. To my surprise, he says yes. The artist draws a small design on his hand, and Alex looks at it like it's the coolest thing ever. While we're standing there, I notice an older couple giving us a disapproving look. I can't tell if it's because Alex is obviously not from a single Indian background or if they just disapprove of young couples in general. It stings a bit, but Alex either doesn't notice or ignores it. He's too busy admiring his new henna. Saturday evening, we decide to cap off the day by meeting my parents for dinner at home. I thought maybe after seeing how excited Alex is about Indian culture, they'd feel more comfortable. But when we walk in, I sense the tension right away. My dad notices Alex's henna and narrows his eyes, asking, "Why did you do that?" Alex responds politely, saying he's just exploring the culture, found it beautiful, and wanted to participate. My dad just nods stiffly. Mom tries to lighten the mood by offering everyone a plate of homemade sweets she made earlier. For a while, we all sit in the living room, nibbling on sweet treats in silence. I can't tell if my parents are uncomfortable or just unsure how to start a conversation. Eventually, I ask Alex to tell them about the festival. He describes the music, the colors, the dances, and how he felt a connection to this part of his heritage he never got to explore when he was younger. My parents listen carefully, and I see a faint flicker of approval on my mom's face. Maybe she's touched that Alex wants to learn more about our traditions. Just when I think things are smoothing out, my aunt drops by unexpectedly. The moment she walks in and spots Alex, her expression hardens. She greets him curtly and then turns to me, saying she needs to talk. She pulls me aside to the kitchen, where she tells me I should be more cautious. She warns that people will talk if they see me with someone from a mixed background, especially if we act too affectionate in public. I feel a flush creeping up my neck, part anger and part embarrassment. I look over her shoulder and see Alex standing awkwardly in the living room, trying to chat with my mom about the day's festival. My aunt's words are harsh, but I keep quiet, not wanting to create a bigger scene. Eventually, she leaves, saying she'll check on me later. By the end of the night, I feel drained. Alex notices and offers to leave early so I can have some space. I walk him to the door, apologizing under my breath for the tense atmosphere. He gives me a small, understanding smile and says, "It's okay, I just want you to be alright." Then he's gone, and I'm left in the doorway, wondering how to keep it together when my family and my heart feel like they're pulling me in different directions. Update 5. Hi again. I'm not sure why, but writing these updates feels like a relief, even though the situation's far from resolved. A few days ago, I decided it was time for a different approach. Instead of waiting for more awkward meetings and random run-ins, I suggested that Alex and I organize a small get-together for both families, his and mine, somewhere neutral. Like a park or a community center. When I floated the idea to my parents, they hesitated but eventually said, "We'll come for a short while." Alex spoke to his parents, and they agreed as well. His dad, who's Indian but not very traditional, seemed especially curious to meet my family. His mom, who's Irish, was the sweetest on the phone. She said something like, "I'd love to meet the lovely girl my son can't stop talking about." This morning, we all gathered at a local park. I arrived first with my parents. We claimed a picnic table under a big oak tree, set up some simple snacks, and waited. My dad looked anxious, my mom was adjusting her scarf every few seconds, and I was trying not to pace around. Then Alex's parents arrived. His mom has bright red hair, a huge smile, and rushed over to greet us with open arms. His dad was more reserved but polite. They brought homemade sandwiches and cookies, which they arranged on the table next to our samosas and pakoras. At first, it felt like middle school kids standing at opposite ends of the playground, unsure who should speak first. Eventually, Alex's mom broke the ice by complimenting my mom's scarf. My mom blushed and thanked her, and they started talking about fabric, colors, and where to find the best deals. Alex's dad and my dad ended up discussing sports, of all things, bonding over their shared dislike of a particular football team. I sat next to Alex, glancing back and forth in surprise at how naturally they seemed to settle into conversation once they found common ground. That's not to say everything went perfectly. There were a few awkward silences, especially when the topic veered too close to religion or future plans. But overall, it was better than I'd hoped. I started to feel a glimmer of optimism. Maybe my parents could see that Alex's family wasn't trying to change me or take me away from my culture. They were just different people with their own traditions and backgrounds. By the end of the meetup, both sets of parents were exchanging polite goodbyes and thanking each other for the food. Before we parted ways, Alex's mom asked if we could do this again sometime. My mom didn't outright agree, but she nodded and said, "It was a nice afternoon." Considering how tense things have been, "It was a nice afternoon" felt like a major triumph. Alex and I lingered after they left, just the two of us under the oak tree. He was beaming, saying he felt like this was the first time both families saw each other's humanity instead of just stereotypes. I watched him smile, feeling a wave of relief. Maybe we really can build something meaningful out of all this, no matter how slow the progress. Update 6. Hey everyone. So, after that successful picnic, I was riding a small wave of hope. My parents didn't voice any big objections, and Alex's parents seemed open to more get-togethers. But, as always, reality has a way of sneaking up on me. A week ago, Alex and I were hanging out at my place, watching a cheesy reality show while my mom was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. My dad was still at work. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and it was my aunt again, popping in unannounced. She walked right into the living room, saw Alex sitting there, and her face dropped. I braced myself for some remark, but instead, she looked over at my mom and said, "We need to talk." My mom, obviously flustered, asked Alex and me to wait in my room. As we left, I could hear my aunt whispering in a sharp tone. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew it wasn't good. About 10 minutes passed, which felt like an eternity. Alex kept checking if I was okay, while I paced around my room, half listening to the muffled conversation. Finally, my mom appeared at my door, looking weary. She said, "Your aunt thinks you should take a step back from this relationship, at least until we figure some things out." My heart sank. "Figure out what?" I asked, but Mom just shook her head and mumbled something about people talking, extended family being concerned, and how it might reflect on us if I got too serious too soon. Alex was quiet, absorbing all this. I glanced at him, wishing he didn't have to see my family's internal drama firsthand. Then, in a soft voice, he said, "I understand your aunt's worries, but I care about you. I'm not here to disrupt your family." It was probably the gentlest way anyone could respond. My mom looked torn, and after a moment, she put a hand on Alex's shoulder and said, "I see that. But you have to understand, this is not just about you two. In our family, everything connects." I didn't argue with her, but inside, I felt conflicted. I tried to stay calm, remembering that my parents are not the bad guys here, they're just influenced by a network of relatives who hold traditional views. Still, it made me wonder how long I could handle these constant judgments. Before Alex left, my aunt stepped out of the guest room. She gave him a forced smile, then turned to me, saying, "We'll talk more later," in a tone that felt more like a warning. I walked Alex to the door, apologizing again for the chaos. He just shook his head, squeezed my hand, and said, "I'm not upset with you." I watched him leave, feeling grateful for his patience but worried about the growing tension in my family. Update 7. Hey again. Life's been a bit of a roller coaster since the last update, but there's a silver lining. My parents are slowly warming up to Alex despite my aunt's interference. Let me walk you through the most recent events as they happened. A few days ago, my mom and dad surprised me by saying they'd like to invite Alex over for dinner. Just him, no big extended family, no random pop-ins by my aunt. My mom specifically said she wanted to cook a variety of dishes to show him more of our culinary traditions. I was stunned but excited. When Alex arrived that evening, he brought flowers for my mom and a small box of sweets for my dad. My dad looked a bit awkward, but I noticed he was touched. The meal turned out to be quite an experience. My mom made an elaborate spread, homemade biryani, different curries, fresh chapatis. Alex was bowled over by how many flavors there were. He kept complimenting my mom's cooking, and she, in turn, offered him extra helpings. It was a lot friendlier than the last time we all sat down to eat. At one point, we moved to the living room for dessert. Alex opened up about his childhood, how his parents split up when he was a teen, and how he spent summers with each side of his family, learning bits of Indian culture from his dad's relatives and bits of Irish culture from his mom's. He admitted he never felt fully immersed in either side. My dad listened carefully, occasionally nodding. When Alex finished, Dad said, "It's good that you're curious about your heritage. It's never too late to learn." I caught my mom smiling faintly. There was a subtle warmth in the room that I hadn't felt before. They talked a bit about Indian festivals, asked if Alex would be interested in attending one with us sometime. Alex agreed enthusiastically. Before the night ended, Dad even cracked a small joke about Alex not being able to handle spicy food, which made everyone laugh. I realized it was his way of lightening the mood. After Alex left, my parents didn't say anything super encouraging like "we love him." But they didn't criticize either. Mom just said, "He's polite, and he appreciates our culture," while Dad nodded. That was enough to make me feel like we were turning a corner. For the first time, I felt like my parents were seeing Alex as a person, not just a symbol of something unfamiliar. Update 8. Hello everyone. I've been hesitating to share this part, but it's a big development. Alex proposed to me a few days ago. I know it sounds fast, we've only been dating for a little under a year, but we've gotten really close, and it felt right. The proposal wasn't elaborate. We were on a hike at our favorite nature trail, where we first realized how much we enjoyed each other's company. He suddenly stopped, took out a small ring, and asked if I'd spend my life with him. My heart nearly burst. I said yes, but then the reality of telling my family set in. After the initial wave of joy, I felt a lump in my throat, remembering all the concerns and criticisms. I took a day to gather myself before I told my parents. When I finally did, we were sitting in the living room. I just blurted it out. Alex proposed, and I said yes. For a moment, it was dead silent. My dad was the first to speak. He asked, "Are you sure you're ready?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. My mom looked shocked, but not angry. Eventually, she whispered, "This is a big step." I explained how Alex and I might not follow every tradition perfectly, but we want to respect both families. We might combine certain customs from both sides for the wedding. We're open to ideas. I told them we weren't rushing to pick a date just yet. We just wanted their blessing to move forward when the time felt right. My parents exchanged a long look. Then my dad said, "You're adults now. We can't stop you if this is what you truly want. But please, think carefully." My mom was quieter, but I could see tears forming in her eyes, not necessarily of sadness, but more from the weight of the situation. A few hours later, my aunt came over. Because of course she heard about the proposal through the family grapevine. She was less supportive, to put it mildly. She warned me again about mixing cultures, raising children between different traditions, and how complicated it could be. I tried to stay respectful, but I politely told her that this was my life decision and I believed love could bridge these gaps. She left looking frustrated. I'm still caught in a swirl of emotions, excitement about the engagement, fear of family conflicts, hope that maybe this can turn into a celebration everyone can enjoy. I keep reminding myself that Alex and I aren't alone in this. We have each other, and we have time to figure it out. Final update. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this journey. This will probably be my last update for a while, because things have taken a surprising turn. After the proposal news settled, Alex and I decided to organize an engagement dinner. We invited our closest friends, immediate family, and even my aunt. The idea was to show everyone we're committed, but also that we respect both cultures and want to move forward in a way that honors where we come from. The dinner took place at a community hall, decorated with a blend of traditional Indian lanterns and some Irish-inspired floral arrangements. My mom helped me pick the lanterns, and Alex's mom helped with the flower choices. On the menu were dishes from both sides, spicy Indian curries, mild Irish stews, and a few fusion items like spiced shepherd's pie. We wanted everyone to see how our worlds could come together in a fun way. When my parents arrived, they looked a bit overwhelmed by the setup, but also intrigued. My dad greeted Alex with a friendly handshake, and my mom gave him a small smile. Alex's parents came soon after, bringing a homemade soda bread that disappeared in minutes. The atmosphere was casual yet meaningful, with music softly playing in the background, some Hindi songs and Irish folk tunes, alternating. I remember watching my aunt step into the hall, scanning the decorations, and shaking her head as though she expected chaos, but then she saw that people were laughing and enjoying the food, and she seemed to relax, just a little. As the night went on, we made a small announcement. We thanked everyone for being there and said we recognized that our marriage would be a blend of two cultures that haven't always meshed seamlessly. But we also believe that unity can be found in shared experiences, like food, music, and the joy of celebration. I glanced at my parents, hoping they understood how much it meant to me that they showed up. My dad gave me the tiniest nod of approval. Later, during dinner, my mom spent a long time talking to Alex's father about the nuances of Indian festivals, Diwali, Navratri, all those special times, and asked if he ever celebrated them. He admitted he used to when Alex was small but had fallen out of the habit. My mom lit up, describing the way we light diyas around the house, the significance behind each festival. I saw Alex's dad listening intently, perhaps remembering times he shared with his own relatives. On the other side of the room, Alex's mom got into a conversation with my aunt. I was worried at first, but as I passed by, I overheard them discussing Irish pastries and Indian sweets, comparing notes. My aunt seemed genuinely curious, asking about recipes. It was a small breakthrough. No one changed their long-held beliefs overnight, but they were bonding over common ground, love of good food. By the end of the evening, I felt something shift. My aunt approached me, not with a scowl, but with cautious kindness. She said, "You've brought us all here in a nice way. I can see you put in effort." That might sound lukewarm, but coming from her, it felt like a step forward. My parents actually seemed proud. On our way out, Dad said quietly, "Tonight was good," and I could hear genuine relief in his voice. Looking around the dimly lit hall as people trickled out, I felt a surge of hope. Yes, there will be challenges, family expectations, cultural blending, and the day-to-day reality of marriage. But for the first time, I saw everyone in one space, getting along, at least on the surface. That spark of acceptance is more than I dared to imagine a few months ago. So here we are. Alex and I haven't set a wedding date yet. We want to take our time planning something that honors both sides, step by step. We know we can't please everyone perfectly, and there may be more bumps in the road, but seeing my parents share a meal with Alex's parents, noticing my aunt actually laugh at one of Alex's jokes, these moments feel like proof that understanding can grow where you least expect it. If there's any hidden lesson I'm taking from all this, it's that learning about each other's backgrounds isn't just a nice gesture, it's essential. The more we celebrate our differences alongside our similarities, the more room we make for acceptance. It's not about losing identity, it's about expanding it. To everyone who followed my story, thank you. Your insights, your empathy, even your disagreements, all helped me see different angles of this situation. I'm ending this post with a cautious but genuine smile on my face. Things are looking up, and I'm excited for the next chapter. That's all for now. I hope this reminds someone out there that even if two worlds feel far apart, they can overlap in ways that enrich both sides. I'm signing off with gratitude and a heart full of cautious optimism. Wish us luck.